Hi, this is Dr. Scott Young. And if you'd like to go on to and learn a lot more about NESARA, you can go to Dr. Scott Young down below. You can see that. You can go onto the channel or my website, and you can download a 13-page document. I think it is maybe 14-page document on NESARA. It's a helpful article, and I had a guy just tell me the other day. I've heard, tens of thousands of people who downloaded this article, and just help them out. And you could donate if you feel like it. You don't have to. You can do it for free. I'm not asking either way. You choose what you want to do. Okay. All right. Let's jump into this conversation. We're going to talk a lot about the Brunson case. I'm going to show you several things on screen, and we'll bounce back and forth depending upon between those. Little background. Brunson case comes up with there's the Brunson brothers. These are four musicians. Two of the brothers decide to bring up a case. And it is a personal injury case, and they'll explain it a little bit more with that too. Comes up in Utah court, and it has the part of the problem with the case, total validity, by the way. But part of the problem with the case, and it comes up in 22. This is why we were all excited when that case first came out. And you had part of the problem is that you've got this weird circumstance of the Chevron Deference. The Chevron Deference, in essence, from 1984 and sunsetted this year by SCOTUS, so weirdly, right? And it says basically that, the original point of the documentation is that if a agency like the EPA, which, by the way, that would be what the Brunson case was about, with Chevron bringing a case against the EPA, making up, these weird regulations, right? And it basically said, hey, listen, if those regulations haven't violated law, like they haven't murdered, killed, whatever, kind of thing, then they're going to have deference, which means you almost have to have permission from the government to sue them. Like, who's going to say, oh, yeah, go ahead. You have permission to sue me all you want to, right? No. Because if you're talking about a civil case, then you're personally liable in that way. Because that's actually how the oath of office works. We're going to talk a lot about the oath here. It couldn't go through some of SCOTUS from a procedural level point until the Chevron deference. Now, Loy, who I've met before and talked through this kind of thing, it basically stipulates that from January 6th to January 16th, the election of 2020 had to be adjudicated in the two houses. They had to sit and talk about it. Now, this almost came about in 2000, Gore and Bush, or Gore v. Bush. And the hanging chads, razor thin margins between those two. Realize there's something going down in the deep state. Both of them were deep state anyway, but there was something going very strange in the deep state. They were setting up a precedent to come. Because what Bush would do is bring on emergency orders after 9/11, like the Patriot Act and TSA, that would abridge your rights in so many ways with that too. And I would say that we, in some ways, some portions, have allowed the federal government to have emergency orders over us, and they have never been stopped. Okay. But they adjudicated the case in Christmas time-ish of 2000, so they don't have to get to January 6th. January 6th is a very interesting date because prior to this, by a couple days, the new incoming senators and congressmen are coming in, and then they get their oath of office and they get their place around the government, their little building set up, or their, get their staff in place, all that kind of stuff happens, right? So they get their oath of office. January 6th, if you have a presidential election, and if it's a normal elections, guy loses, other dude comes on, whatever, they shake hands on the 20th, but on the 6th, they kind of go, electoral vote goes for that. And they might have a little conversation. They might, claim, they might whine and complain like in 2016. Think about that one for a second. But They didn't do anything because Trump clearly beat Hillary, and they were very, very upset about it. And they had no answers for this issue. Okay. So all they have to do on January 6th, when you have a hotly contested 2020 election with massive amounts of election fraud issues, massive amount of voter fraud issues all over the place. James Langford, senator from Oklahoma, supposedly a conservative, used to be, right? Definitely bought for and paid by the idiots, stipulated to me directly in a letter that 700 people, at least 700 people from that time frame, were prosecuted for a violent insurrection. You're going to hear this word insurrection a few times here. Then he stipulates the timeline of the deep state. Now, he's up there on the lectern saying about ready to say his piece that we knew before, and we were really hoping for this because we didn't know what's going on. And he's saying, I'm not going to certify this election. The January 6th weirdness stuff happens. He steps up on stage and certifies the election. And, Pence does the little, Mason handshake, and, off we're off, and we're off. Now, people who went to January 6th timeframe, I know at least a handful of them who have had long conversations with, including Brandon Flowers, Trina Welch. And one of the things that they would say, almost every one of them, to a man or woman, would say that Trump got on stage really late that day. And I mean, he's always late to get on stage. If you went at 9 o'clock for a time frame he's going to speak, he's not going to get up there until like 9:15, 9:20, right? But supposedly he went later than that. And there was a back tent that he was in, and he was in there for a long while. So he gets up on stage and he does an inordinately boring speech. I mean, this is what every one of them said. And he just went on and on. They're like, what are you doing? I mean, are you trying to like whip up the crowd and get us ready for a protest? And then he said, peacefully, let's walk up to the Capitol. Now, from the lawn that they're at to the Capitol is 20, 30 minutes at least if you're in good shape, you're ambling. But remember, you've got a mass of people that, there are so many people there, right? It would be very hard to move that fast. As the people were walking up on to the front steps, there's different levels of steps up to the Capitol. They see off, several, maybe 100 yards, 50 yards, whatever it was. They saw people started pushing into the Capitol already. So there's a separate group. Those people hadn't been with Trump. That tells you something. All of those people, the Antifa, the Proud Boys, all of the fakers, right, and the FBI, the embedded FBI that were absolutely there, are pushing into the Capitol and creating. When by the time the people came up and they came into the areas, it was just open. They had no idea what was going on. There's a picture of an older woman. She's got to be in her late 60s, early 70s, and she's just looking around. There's one of the people that got arrested. Brandon Flowers said that he plugged into Nancy Pelosi's wall just to charge his phone with a whole bunch of people, and they're smoking, they're smoking marijuana. I don't know if Brandon did or not. It's not relevant. It doesn't really matter if that actually occurred. If they smoked a doobie, but they were arrested. He was in jail for plugging in his phone and maybe smoking a doobie in her office. And was kept in jail for 36 months, was told after 6 months that he could be out of jail if he would sign an agreement that said Donald Trump set him up and sent him to do this. He, like several others, wouldn't do it. And to their credit, and we need to exonerate every one of them. January 6th prisoners make me so mad I'm spitting nails every time I think about it. Okay, So all their procedure is to meet for 10 days in that time frame to talk about an election before they certify on the 16th and the 20th the new president comes on, right? Let's look at the first of these conversations with my friend Steve Schultz with Elijah Streams and Loy here.
Federal Court of Utah docketed and noticed us that they had decided to do what we were suing them to do. They reversed their decision and they ordered the chief clerk of the court of the Federal Court of Utah to issue the 388 summonses and allowed the complaint to move forward, which the U.S. attorneys represented, and that's the one that's at the Supreme Court. Now, the Rule 11 is the Supreme Court Rule 11. And what that means is we found a rule with Supreme Court documents that if they feel your case is of imperative public importance, they will allow you to bypass the normally required 10th Circuit Court of Appeals and file it. And they did that. They allowed that to happen. They filed it. It's the first Rule 11 ever allowed to be filed by someone representing themselves. In U.S. history, this is the first time in the history of the United States that someone filing a personal damage claim under Rule 11 able to bypass.
Now, think about that for a second. He's talking about a personal damage claim. Now, some lawyers have argued against me and everyone else. There was no damage. What do you mean there's no damage? My vote doesn't count and there's no damage against me? Which is my right as a legal American? That is personal damage. That is the definition of personal damage.
The 10th Circuit was able to file one. Now, the last time a Rule 11 was filed by the Supreme Court was in the 70s. So the current justices, this is the first Rule 11 the current justices have allowed to be filed.
Now, think about that for a second. Special circumstances are going to be so involved in here. This is totally nutty. Hasn't happened since the 70s.
Now, here's the last part of this is when they deny a hearing, it's not dead. They denied a hearing twice, and it is still alive. They can pull it off the shelf. They've done it in the past, and they can completely adjudicate the whole complaint, or they can remand it back to federal court. They could overturn the lower court's decision, remand it back to federal court, and then the investigation process would pursue, and that would mean we could depose and we could get questions answered, interrogatories filed, and every single one of those defendants would then be exposed for why they didn't allow a 10-day investigation.
Whoa. Now, there's 388 members who were listed, very interesting members. Some weren't listed. And that could take another long time to try to figure that one out. Now, think about who that is. It's Congress, Senate, fake President Biden, fake Kamala, right? Now, let's say you're part of the deep state. You've always won every single time. You're not going to answer that one. You're going to allow, the judge who's in your back pocket to answer for you. Fine. How about anyone else who comes in and isn't deep state? Now, we do know there are a few in Senate and Congress. How about them? Why wouldn't one of them say, I'm going to make a comment upon this thing? Their legal right. Because if I'm included with, let's just say, 388 audiologists around America are indicted, given, there's a civil suit against us. And I don't care how much my lawyer or the 388 counsel lawyers, lawyers of those counsel, would say, no, we got this thing in the back. I'm like, listen, I'm going to put my own words in there because I don't know if I don't put my own words in there that doesn't have an effect upon the courts. Do you catch it? But not one of them did. This is what messed us up in 22, because in about October of 22, when this case was coming up and we were waiting for them to respond to the claim, none of them did. And you're going, okay, that is unprecedented in everything. I mean, in all of history, not 388 people wouldn't say anything about a claim against them for breaking their oath of office, which could be leveled against them as treason, that you could die over it? Do you not see how nuts that is? Let's watch him talk at this recent one. This is, by the way, Open the Heavens. It was supposed to be in Boise in November 9. I was supposed to be there. My wife got really sick, and I mean sicker than we've had in our 30 plus years of marriage. And I couldn't leave her. She couldn't get out of bed, right? SG and a friend of mine, he and I've talked many times. We've been on my show. SG had 3 planes canceled underneath him. And there was some spiritual warfare at this particular event. This is what he says. Oh, sorry. Let's start again here.
Climate, the political climate, the shift that's happening, the support the Supreme Court, I believe, has now is really unbelievable. And I've been saying from the get-go, even arguing with my brothers, it's like, don't get depressed about a denial. I said CNN spelled our name right, for crying out loud. This is getting some national exposure, and it's really about America waking up. I mean, the truth is, you guys and others have awakened to the binding oath concept that the case is about, and these U.S. attorneys fighting with absolute immunity claims. It's just ridiculous. But we had some miracles happen. The federal court, we weren't even supposed to be in the federal court with this case. This is a personal damage claim. You've got to get permission. So after taking the federal court of Utah and the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals to state court, which was another miracle, the state court clerk allowed us to even file it there, showing them the constitutionality of our complaint, where the Constitution protects your right to bring any action against any person or entity, and showing them that, and then for them.
But the problem with that is that we have the Chevron doctrine that still existed at that moment, and he never gets into this, but I think that it's relevant here with that too. But
to reverse their decision. Now, my supervising judge in the federal court of Utah was an Obama-appointed judge, but there are other justices that weigh in on this. And so I'm notified that they had reversed their decision, and they ordered the chief clerk of the court to move this forward and ordered 388 summonses to be issued by the chief clerk of the court. Within 48 hours, those summonses were issued, and the U.S. attorneys were on board defending, and that's the case that's at the Supreme Court right now under their Rule 11, which is the first Rule 11 petition for writ of certiorari ever filed. Bound by oath to this Constitution, and they're going to realize that our politicians have been hiding behind the absolutely false absolute immunity claims, and this is going to come to an end with America waking it up, and the court of public opinion is going to help the Supreme Court of the United States do the right thing, and it's going to be fantastic.
He is still excited about it. There's conversations that he's been under NDA, but we don't know what he's under NDA for. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the constitutionality conversation. There is a real interesting conversation that's happening by Hiawatha. And she says this: Trump and his transition team are already breaking the law. Wait a second, what? I would know because I wrote the law. What law are you talking about? Incoming presidents are required to prevent conflicts of interests. Wait, what conflict of interest? He already designated his stuff into Donald Trump Jr.'s name, his son, and he's not in charge of those things. He's not been a part of that. And boomerang effect. When these idiots bring this stuff up, they're telling you something you'd be surprised about. So they sign ethics agreements. Wait a second. Doesn't that sound like oath of office? This is what illegal corruption looks like. Now, let's throw something that several people are bringing up as an interesting idea. So let's use this screen. I got to pull the screen share here. Okay. So The second article under the third section, or the Article 2 under Section 3, talks about the duties of president. Okay, so he shall from time to time give Congress and of the State of the Union, so he's talking about, you got to tell what's going on, right? Recommend their consideration such measures, and he's talking about what we do, so State of the Union is going, listen, I'm recommending Congress do X, Y, Z, right? And he may, and I want you to watch this one incredibly carefully here, okay? This section here, I'm going to blue it out here. He may, on extraordinary occasions. Now they capitalize this. Remember, this is a very different time frame in the late 1700s. It has a more Victorian way of writing. There's a lot of interesting, semicolons in here because they're connected portions of the sentences. Semicolons connect from the last one without a conjunction in there. My English background. Now, they use a capital letter because it's saying pay attention, in essence. He may, under extraordinary occasions, convene both houses or either of them, and in the case of disagreement between them, with respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such a time as he thinks is proper. The president has that opportunity to do that under the possibility that they might not allow his appointees to come on. And you go, well, so what? I mean, what does that have to do with anything? It is a constitutionality point that he might be able to say in a different way. Now, let me bring you another constitutionality area that we have. And we're going to show you this one, and then I'm going to let you listen to Raskin talk. Now, you've heard me talk about Raskin before. The 14th Amendment comes in 1868. President Grant is putting this sucker through. He is obviously, General Grant, who was Appomattox in 1865, defeating the South. So very, very popular general. And Lincoln's already been killed in 1865, right? So 1868, they put this 14th Amendment, and it's got some of the most unique points. And it says, no person shall be a senator, representative of Congress, elector of president, elector, or vice president, may hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or any state. Like, you're going, like, you can be a military officer, you could be a city councilman, doesn't matter. It's really, really specific. And by the way, when they do this legally, they're doing this on purpose. The 16th Amendment that has the IRS is very, very vague. This is not vague. And so under any circumstance, having previously taken an oath, you've heard that some of them have said, or, good truthers who've done great work have told you they haven't signed their oath of office. Doesn't matter. You signed an oath of office. And what if Scott decided to be the Tulsa police chief for 6 weeks and no one noticed? But I didn't sign the oath of office. I was a fraud in office, right? I operated in the office, which would put me in the oath of office. I mean, that's by abstention, in essence. But you might disagree with me on that. That's fine. But I'm just telling you, you can fake the oath, you can not take the oath, or you could have an oath of office or have a previous oath of office, right? So any member, blah, 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 to support the Constitution of the United States. The point is, you've taken an oath of office to support the Constitution. But if they shall have engaged in insurrection against the same. No, the 16th Amendment, or excuse me, the 14th Amendment comes 1868. In 1871, we have the Constitution that has been adjusted. And all it did grammatically is move from the Constitution for the people is to Constitution of the United States. It is one of the hallmarks of we talking about the corporation conversation, right? This is the corporation. And by the way, everyone from 1871 on is in violation of that corporation with that too. Even the good guys. You can be in violation. And the penalty has to be, you just have to wipe them off of that oath of office, of the ability for office. Now, the one person that doesn't get wiped out is the aggrieved party, because this intimates to an aggrieved party. Now, here's the funny thing. Let's listen to Dummy over here talk about his thing.
What can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means. And I'm glad that Sherilyn's creating her new center so we can bring that.
So how strange is that situation that he's talking about? Here's to pull that off screen, and we're going to show you this one here. This is what happened with Trump, right? Now, this is the official stuff. You and I both know tons of voter frauds going on in some of these states, right? And they haven't even finished this idiot one with Harris and Trump. And yet he wins by what, 3 or 4 million votes, and there's 312 electoral college votes, right? So it's a clear win, even when they tried to push together all the the illegals and all the other stuff I've shown you in the past, right? Okay, but Trump puts in something else. In September of 2018, he puts together, and this is a very interesting time frame. My friend Roger, the lawyer that I've interviewed here. Thank you, Roger. By the way, you're a stud. I'm just going to keep bringing that up over and over again. Roger's talking about this. This is an interesting time frame. This, by the way, in 2018, what you don't know is this right before the midterms of Trump's time frame. Well, you knew that part. But many of you don't realize that in 2017, they stopped calibrating the 32 Dominion machines. The 32 states of Dominion machines. That means 2018, 2020, 2022, 2024 are all illegal, uncountable kinds of operations. And those Dominion machines, like they can shift votes around. You could have voted for Trump and it goes away, right? It's just how they do that. Whereas paper ballot is the accounting systems, right? That's when you see some of these people and they couldn't click their little button on Trump, but they could do it for Harris. Boop, it goes right through. So what he does is he catches them here. So Executive Order 13818 is so powerful. And I learned about this, by the way, in 21, I think it was, when I was talking to Derek Johnson, because I hadn't really paid any attention to this one. I'm all over, EO 13818, but he was talking about this one because it's so powerful. So what Trump did is basically say this. So anyone in office, and if there's an ability for persons located inside, or located while they're in a substantial part inside or outside of America, they're interfering with the election, blah, 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 right? If they have a campaign structure of covert distribution of propaganda or disinformation, and they claim that against us, right, of social media. But who did that? How about Twitter before Elon came on? How about Facebook? How about all the rest of the social media, that also tells you about the media points. Boy, it puts them under this, right? Constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat. Wait, isn't that the exact same thing that we heard about an extraordinary occasion? He uses the same exact wording. An extraordinary threat to national security. I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with this threat. And what confused many of us, including, I remember Derek and I were talking about this in 2023, and right before this, and Biden, we didn't think Biden would sign it back in, and he did anyway. He did it again in 24. Like, what? Why would they put themselves in this kind of realm? I would sunset the snot out of this thing if I was the deep state. Now, let's use another statement that has been brought up. Elizabeth Warren, Hiawatha, or Pocahontas, whichever one you want to use with her. Donald Trump and his transition team are already breaking the law. I would know because they've already done. Because they wrote the law. Incoming presidents required to prevent conflicts of interest, sign ethics agreements. Right? What? Wait, what? Remember we talked about that one before. What? Now, here's what I want you to hear. Over and over again, there have been cases against him, and he had 34 counts against him. Wait, that sounds very, very, very familiar. Can I show you what 34 counts might be like? November of 2017. Such a weird time frame. It sets off things. My fellow Americans, over the next several days, you will undoubtedly realize that we are taking back our great country. This is what we hoped for in 2020. The land of the free from the evil tyrants that wish to harm us and destroy the last remaining refuge of shining light. On POTUS order, oh baby, POTUS order, we have initiated certain fail-safes that shall safeguard the public from the primary fallout which is slated to occur on 11/3. Wait a second. We never thought about that one very closely. Why didn't we think about what he's saying? Fallout is a nuclear conversation term. It's what you would use if you said there was a nuclear explosion that occurred. And in 2017, we didn't read this one correctly. Frankly, I don't think that we've read this one correctly all the way through, because we're looking at military intelligence. It's really hard to do. So 11/3 would be at the same basic time frame of 2020, right? So we thought, okay, that would happen, right? And because it talks about the arrest of Podesta. And public riots are organized by serious numbers of efforts to prevent the arrest and capture of more senior officials. Wait a second, they're using false flag events to cover those senior public officials. Do you remember the Summer of Love in 2020? What were they covering up? Now, here's what it goes into, blah, blah, blah. It talks about child trafficking, or it deals with a special operative measures, safety and well-being of every person. The atmosphere of the country is unfortunately divided. And then it uses something that doesn't grammatically make sense. The emergency broadcast signal. And it says EMS. Like, dudes, you got to understand, from a grammatical standpoint, I would say, if I was grading the paper, because I have a degree in English, right? If I had a degree in that paper, I'd be like, dude, EBS, right? They didn't make a grammatical mistake to, like, on accident. They made a grammatical mistake on purpose, because the emergency broadcast signal comes on, there's an initiation point and an ending point. The initiation point might have been on POTUS order. What POTUS order could he have given to the people? It's an interesting conversation. And I think I personally have gotten this wrong, because I didn't think I understood it. And Roger, my friend, was telling me about this one point. Trump's on stage. Is on stage in 2020. Remember we just said that. And he's talking. And he says, peacefully, let's go to the Capitol. He tweets it, right? He does a tweet about it that gets him exited off of social media, specifically Twitter. Like, never happened before. And puts you in the state of emergency. Wow. Which means that from a military standpoint from 11/3 on, which that's what it's saying. Or it could have been January 6th when he made the POTUS announcement. Everything from military, everything you ever do after that time frame, we're going to arrest, and it's going to be a significant amount of arrests. And the deep state are stupid. That's the intimation of that. Okay. So let's bring up possibilities. Now, these are Scott possibilities. I'm not going to tell you one of them will work that way. I'm just telling you possibilities. Now, I personally didn't think we'd get to election, like I said before. I was wrong. And I always kind of say this still is a war, okay? Even if I get something wrong, this still is a war. And I'm trying to suss this out without, knowing what they're trying to do. And they're not going to tell any one of us how to do this, right? Option 1, allow time to pass until January 6, 2025. Allow the deep state to play their dumb hand in oath of office, declaring oath of office or illegal claims against Trump due to federal crimes he didn't commit. Then the two houses decertified the duly elected president by popular vote and legit electoral vote by his rightful points of office. And then boomerang, baby, here we go. Option 2, this is Rogers kind of thing. Allow them to skip the procedural process, something didn't do on J 6th. Allow them to do the electoral process play out, let it play out. Let them whine and complain like they did in 2016. And then Trump does the oath of office on the 20th and indicate that they have violated their oath of office. And remember, I told you that they do their oath of office before January 6th, which initiates Executive Order 13848 and the 14th Amendment under the 3rd section. And those who broke the office from 2021, considering that that's when he talks about the peacefully dispersed point, institute a final blow of the EBS, like weather emergencies. And I'm going to explain that in a second. To begin the show, or some combination thereof, right? So whatever that might be, whether it's like a weather emergency, right? You have an initiation point to a final point. The John Hinckley Jr. Shooting, I want to say it's 82, 83. When I was in high school, I remember watching TV. I was sick that day. I was just watching TV because I didn't have much to do. And I'm watching this, and boom, they interrupted the programs. There was an initiation of interrupting the programs. Something occurred. And then there's an ending point. And they let the programs go back. Now, disclosures can happen during it, but they tend to happen a little bit at the end or afterward? Did we have the initiation of the EBS in 11.3, 11.4, initiating some conversation of the law of war manual that Patriot Patel talks about? Did we have it on January 6, 2021? Do we have the final point of that EBS or the emergency message thing, which comes on a phone, right? That's why they're intimating. It's a process. EBS was all about telling you about a massive emergency, a massive special situation that the public had to be told about. And what the heck you think is the Article 2 saying, by the State of Union, he may by extraordinary occasions convene both houses and set them aside. Is it possible that way? I think it's very possible. Now, I gave you a bunch of ideas. I want you to think about that. But I'm not telling you which one, because I don't know which one it is. But we're counting down, aren't we? We're seeing the countdown. That's one person just wrote in there, I believe in Nasara or all this other stuff. It's all fake and false and da-da-da-da. I'm like, you're dumb. Sorry, but you're dumb. You're not making any sense. I'm trying to show you the legality of this. I'm trying to show you we are so screwed without the Nasara thing. And the elections are just as key as the go-back currency. Hope it helped you.